right, the Connor Williams plot line seems to have been ironed out pretty quickly. Sometimes you don't want to be right on something, and you always want to be right, but there's certain things that you're right on, you're like, damn, I wish I was wrong. And I kind of said he wasn't coming back. And if you look at the quotes that came out by Drew Rosenhaus, it's clear. It's a done deal. So he's not coming back. I want to cover that in the front part. And in the back end, I had a really good comment. And it talked about Tua's ability to read. It was basically, I'll read it to you. It was clear that he can't read, and we got to accept that. And I want to get into the understanding in a very realistic way. Development, processing, and what we're seeing on film is not a linear determination because of all the back end stuff. Okay, so it's very complicated. It's clear Tua is not Peyton Manning. It's clear he's not Joe Burrow. That's not his primary skill set. But you have a perturbation, a movement between when a player comes into the league, what that skill set is, and then how much they can grow in it. Certain areas, that perturbation is very small. Other areas, it's larger. But it's never, you can go from worst ever to the best ever. So Tua has this degree of growth to go along with his other skill sets. And I want to get into reality of that and a really, really good comment. So that's what's going to be on the menu today. I'm feeling better. I've had 4 workouts in 5 days. I have not done that in a long, long time. And I need it. And I think everybody needs it. So I'm getting myself geared up. Live will be this Friday. For the members, had content coming for you guys, but it's coming. I am on fire. I'm hoping this is a trend and not a small blip. So guys, I really feel good about what I'm doing. So I want to give you guys a shout out. I get so many great comments. I just had a guy, Coach, I can't remember his last name, went to some old film of mine and gave me some views on his, and it helped me think about things. I got the comment, and it helped me see some stuff. All the well wishes, all the great investment of you guys in the comments, along obviously what keeps me doing the gig, the subs, the likes, hitting the notification bell, all that stuff, the views, all that stuff keeps me in the business. So I want to give you a shout out and a shout out to AcePred, my sponsor. Without you, this show ain't going down. Ace Per Head's betting software is the premier white label platform for bookies to manage their players and grow their sportsbook operation. Click the link in the description below to get set up in minutes. Ask for the Curtis promo and get a special introductory discount. All right, the kind of thing, it has some interesting points to it. And if you checked my podcast from a couple of days ago, it basically confirmed a lot of the stuff that Drew Rosenhaus said. Let me read the quote that's kind of gaining some steam now. Asked by WSNV7's Josh Moser about Williams' chances of returning to the Dolphins, agent Drew Rosenhaus said late Sunday night, on behalf of Connor, I'm sure he'd be open to it. I wouldn't think that it's likely he would return here with the Dolphins. I certainly wouldn't rule anything out, but the Dolphins did sign a fine center in Aaron Brewer from the Tennessee Titans and made a big investment. I think Connor, wherever he signs, it will be as a center. So that's essentially what I said. I said that this guy knows his best position is at center. He's looking long-term at center. Aaron Brewer's big investment means they plan to play him in center. He cannot play guard. He can't. I keep hearing people say he played guard and maybe he could play. No, that's why they moved him to center. If he played guard good enough, they wouldn't have moved him to center. He wasn't good at guard. He's too small. Anybody who tells you differently is wrong. He would have to have an insane technique, and strength in order to play at that size at guard. He does not have that. He struggles at center in certain aspects. Others, he's good. So the Dolphins invested in Brewer, and when they did, they basically said, Connor Williams is not coming back here. Connor Williams Of course, they're going to say anything is possible because, you want the threat of another team. So when you're doing negotiations, but he's out of here. He's playing for a different team. And whatever you think about him, now you have Aaron Brewer and Connor Williams, and their tracks of performance is going to reflect heavily on the brass here. But you ask yourself a question. He was injured here. He was with us until early February before the contract ran out. They understood what was going on with him. They didn't sign him to a long-term contract early. They let him play on the one-year deal. They have let him walk. They should have known he could come back if they wanted him. So they did not want him for whatever reason. I don't know. But you've got to understand that if Connor turns out to be really, really good, that's a big miss. If not, and Brewer turns out to be really good, then that's a big hit. But this is a clear indication of what we're trying to do. It was a clear indication that this front office did not want Connor, and they wanted Aaron Brewer, and that's the way it's going to be. Time to move on. He's not playing guard. I like the guy. I think we should have stuck with him. I thought it was a brilliant evaluation. I came to it before anyone else, so of course I'm going to say it's brilliant. And I thought it was a brilliant signing of this guy, but we should have signed him long-term. I just don't understand why we didn't. But it is. It is what it is, and we've got to move on. This offensive line will be Wynn, Brewer, and Eichenberg. I bet it. And Driscoll's not going to do it. Guys, I'll get into the film. I could be wrong, but everything I've seen says no. I mean, good backup, guy you want on your roster, but they've purposely created a situation where Eichenberg will win. Competition will be low. Jones can't beat him or to beat him in the past. There's reasons for that. Some I disagree with and some I agree with. So that's it, guys. So now I want to get into this comment. I think it was a really good comment. I disagree with a lot of it, but it's not about that. It really isn't, guys. If you're an evaluator, a good evaluator at anything, you listen to other people's opinions and it leads you down roads. And even if it tweaks your take by 1 or 2% to be better, how much value was that, even if it is like almost diametrically opposite? I have guys that I love on his channel that totally disagree with me on certain areas, and I love them for it because I got a constant, if you're a scientist, and that's what an evaluator is, there's no emotion, it's evaluation. Scientists, there's a famous saying that with every failure, you're one step closer to success. And so you've got to test, retest, test, and test again. So VP 2001 said this: Herbert and Burrow started their careers with terrible lines, but yet they still flashed greatness. Tua has a weak arm, little to no mobility, durability concerns, and you can't say he's an elite processor because in 4 years we haven't seen him be able to process all 3 levels of the field. Identified checkdowns, audible out of bad plays, identified blitzes. Also, his Wonderlic score 13 would suggest that as well. Every time this guy moves to his alternative reads, the ball usually sails. Just look at the pick he threw against the Chiefs in the playoffs. We have failed at the end of the year, all 4 years with him at the helm, and everything. His limitations slaps us in the face, most turn the cheek, but man, as a diehard fan, I can't ignore it. So I agree with some of the things that are said here, and then I disagree on others, and I want to really parse this comment. And some people might just bristle and say, ugh, and reject anything he says negative about Tua. And then there's the others that if he says something negative about Tua, then immediately the light turns on and like, yes. It might end up that you're right, but how do you get to your evaluation? And how can you port that evaluation in the future if you're not refining it? So I want to really spend time breaking this down in a fair way. And I appreciate it because I really had to consider so many things. And I saw things that I didn't see before, and I want to consider them. So it's good. If you want to cut to the chase, I don't think Tua is an elite processor. I don't think he's ever going to be an elite processor. But what does that mean? Dan Marino wasn't an elite processor. Dan Marino was an instinctual thrower with great peripheral vision, great instincts, and that gut of his allowed that quick release to find the guy open. And I can prove that when they brought the zone blitz, he threw a lot of picks because he saw one thing and he really didn't read it. And when the ball came out, it morphed into something else and he had lots of problems. It took him a while to get through those problems. The zone blitz was a major problem. Add into that his protection. When his protection broke down, it drove the play quicker. And we've got to understand the psych. There's so many elements that go into this thing. And as I keep thinking about it, it's going to get big. And I don't want it to be too big because I don't want people to get lost. I think I have a tendency to get too deep into the weeds and it leaves people maybe like, oh, skip something, I missed something. So I just want to deal on the one thing, the elite. He's not an elite processor after 4 years. Clearly, this is true. He is not Burrow. He's not. Oh, look at Burrow. Burrow had terrible lines. Herbert, not so much. They had a poor run-blocking offensive line, and then they got lots of injuries, but Herbert's offensive line was much better, and it's going to be much better than Tua's. Burrow's was terrible. They asked this guy to do a ton and take loads of beatings, but there was a price to be paid for that. And even through all that process, his offensive line was better than the Dolphins. This is clear. We saw that in 14 years, the pro set passer rating for our team was the worst ever. I dubbed the 2021 offensive line the 45th best offensive line in football. Some people don't get that because they're like, there's only 32 teams. That's the point. Okay? That was atrocious offensive line. Like atrocious. Jesse Davis at tackle with a bad knee. Jackson guard and Eichenberg at tackle. That's scary. That is like not even pro offensive line. But I don't want to use that as an excuse. So I'm going to deal in this thing here. I'm going to get into Tua. So Tua, year one, poor offensive line, all those nice pieces. You had Flowers, you had Karras, a healthier Davis. And healthier Davis wasn't as bad as he was. People remember the injury, but he was a guard that shouldn't play guard, but we wanted to go cheap and whatever. So, but the 2020 offensive scheme was designed on the quarterback making minutia reads and morphing from week to week. This is why Fitzpatrick was a master. He'd seen it all. Gailey talked about he saw the technique of the hand, a defensive lineman change, and he knew what was going on, and he called an audible, and he found the guy open for a touchdown. It's these little nuances, but you can't ask Tua to pick those up in year one, especially with his skill set, which is not elite processing. But then he wasn't physically ready. He should have been brought in. The staff didn't want him in. Somebody forced him in. And so you had incongruity between the scheme, the concepts, the OC, and what the quarterback was able to do. He was supposed to marinate and develop and learn these things in a couple of years for this system. And it would have helped him with his processing, his pre-snap reads, and all this other stuff. So 2021, Gailey's out. Karras is out. Flowers is out, and we get the three OCs, and I told you we had the 45th best offensive line in football, and this guy got the hell beat out, and there was no time. And you were moving to a new system. I think the kid had a different system every year. Now, it doesn't excuse it, but you can't tell me that the optimal way to develop a guy is to give him a new system every year. Burrow was in a new system every year. Herbert transitioned to a Air Coryell offense, and it was a disaster last year. And before that, he had a short system, and he had been marinated in that. So those are two little differences for those, but I'm not going to just add that in there. So then 2022, we moved off the Flores regime to McDaniel regime, and we moved into the movement and the faster throws. We weren't the fastest in the league like we were this year, but we know that there's no time for audibles. So that's one aspect that this kid's never had a chance to really develop. We've never developed it in him. And we have to understand, too, that the offensive line was poor last year. That's why I get the hell beat out of him. It was lots of pressure. And when you add pressure to anything, it gets harder. So if you remember the old I Love Lucy skit where she's on the conveyor belt and she's like making cakes or something and it's going one speed and she's like, oh, this is cake. This is so easy. I got it. All right. And then the conveyor belt starts picking up and she's like, and she starts losing control and eventually they're like just a disaster everywhere. So when you speed up the process of doing something, it increases the complexity. And so Burrow, you could see, his father was a head coach. This guy is his primary talent is his processing. And if you look at the Bengals, they put way more guys in routes than us. They kept less guys in the block, but he took the beating for it and he stood tall, but there was a price to be paid. We didn't do that last year. We got the ball out quick. The kid got a bunch of concussions because we could not run the football and we could not block adequately. And so what we decided to do in 2023 was bring down our time to throw by 0.20 seconds. Guys, that's big in football. That is a huge amount of time. They literally can't get to you at about 2.1 seconds unless they're bringing some crazy kind of blitzing. Okay? And so by dropping it 0.2 of a second and keeping our motion where you can get to the line of scrimmage, you can't do audibles, it made a very poor framework to get this kid as good as we want to get him. Look, whatever his level is, if it's average processing or average manipulation, post and pre-snap recognition, this is not helping him get there. Clearly we know the skills, the quick throw. We clearly know the skills throwing into placement. I disagree with his movement skills. He's got pretty good movement skills. Not great good, but he can climb the pocket pretty well. He was also a little overweight. He's not getting to the edge. That's not happening. Maybe he drops the weight. Maybe he can a little bit, but then it's the injury thing. But this was not set up to accentuate these things. And you could say, well, when you go through his reads, but understand, even Kurt Warner said, like, I don't understand these route concepts. They're so close together. And how few guys we had in routes and how much pressure was still coming. And the run game, you could say, look at our numbers, but it's all to the edge. It's inconsistent. It was never, if you go back and you watch him in college, there was box driving by the linebackers and the safeties because they respected the run game. So the RPOs and the play action, all that stuff had driving defenses, which opened stuff on the back end with these elite receivers he had. You do not see box driving at all, especially at about 1/3 of the season ended to the end. Defenses, they would rush for, play shell, and edge. And so the box driving limits the guys in coverage and it puts the numbers towards the receiver and it begins to make the reads easier. And the more guys you have in routes, the easier it gets to read. Problem is we can't run lots of guys in routes because we can't block long enough. And the last point I want to get to is, all right, so you could say fairly, hey, we're doing this speed throw game because Tua is dumb as a box of rocks with his 13 Wonderlic. And maybe he is. Dan Marino, I think, was 16, though. But again, we understand that Dan Marino, he wasn't an intellectually driven quarterback. He wasn't dumb, but he operated with elite traits in instinct. And maybe he wasn't the prize guy. Maybe he just said, I don't want to do this thing. I don't know. But Dan Marino was only a little bit higher. Okay, so, but the benefit that comes from throwing fast doesn't only work for Tua. It works for McDaniel. By having this offense, you get to the line of scrimmage, you get all this motion. It's a scheme mismatch. And he just has to kind of put it together and make the call, and then the quarterback makes the reads. And you could see the effect it has, but there's lack of nuance in there. And it makes his job easier. It pigeonholes what he's got to get on the field, what he's got to deal with, what he's got to present to the offense. And it makes sense. The guy was in the booth. He wasn't calling plays. He wasn't an OC. It was a lot for him to come in here and have to win now, have to run the team, and have to make the calls. But this framework makes it easier for McDaniel, clearly. Another person is Chris Grier. Chris Grier struggles heavily putting an offensive line together. This staff that we've had in Miami that he's been a part of for a very long time struggles heavily finding offensive linemen. And when you throw fast, it lightens up the difficulty level of the protection needed. And so you can have Eichenberg and Jackson and maybe Wynn this year and whoever else, and you throw that ball fast enough, the job's so easy, anybody could do it. It's the easiest job in the NFL by a country mile. 75% of the throws last year were clean, very high, 2.09 seconds. And so why? If you're trying to get big plays with fast guys, you want to get to that 2.4, 2.45, 2.5 where guys are breaking free, but we can't get to that. So these fast throws help the GM and the team designer. It helps the OC, and it helps Tua. But we really don't fully understand what Tua's capabilities are because he's never been developed properly. What he ran in college, good run attack, RPOs, and play actions, and him moving around. That's not what we got here. We did the same thing with Tannehill. We wanted Tannehill to be Dan Marino, and he wasn't. He goes to the Tennessee Titans and has the build there, and he gets the conference championship. That was the right build for him. It's the build we should have had here, but we developed the whole framework around him poorly. Not saying he'd have gone to Super Bowl, he's the greatest thing ever, but that's not the most conducive environment to take a high first-round pick on a quarterback and get him to be the best of who he is. And while this quick throw stuff, it's the best for Tua in a small skill set, and it accentuates that. It's so pigeonholed that it leaves other talents barren, and it creates a smaller menu. And when you have a smaller menu, you cannot attack the way you want, and you cannot accentuate a quarterback and an offense the way you want. But most of the time, the menu is set by the blockers, by the protection. How many guys you got to keep in to get that protection? How long can you protect, and how many guys you can put into routes? I don't think Tua is ever going to be the guy. Peyton Manning came in. His father was a quarterback. His brothers were quarterbacks. He came in. He is an elite process, took over. Brady came in and managed for years. Short down situation, complex route combinations, unbelievable blocking, and a diverse menu. And after 5 or 6 years, much like Breeze, they developed. He didn't come out super processor. It's a processing development. So whatever Tua can get to, it's not been really developed. And so you can't really he might be terrible. He might not be the guy for us. I don't know. But the development is so poor in this area. And you'll say, well, we got him all the receivers. But it doesn't. It starts in the trenches. It starts in the O-line. It's been a poor O-line. And this speed throw helps poor O-line play a ton. Allen, they reset him. They had him in shotgun and had guys going around and had him buy time. And when the blitzes came in 2020, he broke out. But his team said, you know what? Maybe we won't blitz him. Let's just sit in zones. All of a sudden, he had problems. And what did they do? They went away from the Dorsey-Dable system. They reined him in, started running the football, running play actions, and they're rebuilding him. The same thing they're doing with Herbert. Look at Mayfield going from one team to another. He wasn't a good processor, and he became a better processor. Allen is going to develop. Herbert's going to develop, and you're going to get the best from these guys you can. I don't think he's been developed properly. I don't know if it's going to be good enough, but I know that we haven't seen the best of him in this portion because he doesn't get a chance with the pre-snap audibles and movement and stuff like that. And he doesn't get a chance because the blocking's not there, and we don't develop the route combinations. Where's the timing routes? Where's the comebacks? Where's the short area stuff? Remember McDaniels from New England? He would do that. He would do small little inside rubs for a 5-yard gain. Where are those things? It's all big chunk pocket throws and get it out quick. That is not the most conducive environment. Don't know if what he'll be when he's done, but I know he could have been developed better, clearly. So that's my take. Hope you enjoyed. Guys, I appreciate all you do. Take what you can from this evaluation of mine. I think there's some value there, but I'm not saying it's lock solid. I think this kid, in some ways, has been helped, and hindered. And I think he's still got a long way to go in his development. Will it be enough? I don't know. Curtis saying, catch you next time. Be well. Go Fins. Curtis out. Start building your own online sportsbook today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.